Want to know what goes on in the mysterious mind of a teenager? Curious about a teen's worldview and thoughts on today's issues? Join Coffee Break with Trail Youth, where teens expose what life is like through their eyes and, well, just really speak their minds. Unedited, of course.
Welcome to Coffee Break with Trail Youth. This is Kristen, and today we are going to be continuing our discussion on suicide in light of the different events that have occurred in the past few weeks. Today I've got a very special guest. Her name is Naomi Johansson, and she's 19 years old, and she's agreed to come on here to share her experience and her story dealing with suicidal ideation, as well as dealing with the loss of her friend to suicide. So Naomi, she's going to share with us a poem, a very beautiful poem that she wrote, and then Naomi, I'm going to let you take it from there and share with us your story.
Perfect, thank you. So this poem is called More Than a Feeling. Sometimes she finds herself wondering where she belongs, feeling lost in a world that wants to decide who she is and what she will become. Sometimes her mind is crowded with thoughts that are causing her light to dim. The thoughts that tell her she is less than. The thoughts that try to consume her when she is not close to him. And the thoughts that are nothing more than just lies within. Sometimes this world has a way of stealing her joy, causing her to question if she can have these thoughts when she has him. Through the darkest nights, she learns that feelings come and go, and that these lies have no room to grow. It's hard not to question when the lights are low, and the feelings of joy no longer show. But she finds comfort in the truth that he will never let go. When her faith runs dry and the cracks start to show, she clings to her Savior, the one who knows. The one who knows the pain she's endured and held her when her tears started to fall, listening to her when she has no words at all. These feelings of uncertainty will come and go, and this world will continue to grab a hold. But when life gets uneasy, and it often will, she needs to remember that he will be still.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So you said that you had struggled with suicidal ideation. Can you share us your story?
So it first started when I was 13, and there was a lot of transitions in my life. So a year before that, my uncle passed away in a car accident, and that was the first death that I've ever experienced in my life that really affected me. And so when I was 13, I switched schools, and the environment was completely different. I went to a co-op that I interacted with kids every day, to being online schooled, which I was kind of isolated and alone, just me and my computer. And that's when I started to feel completely alone. I started to feel like no one actually saw me for who I was, and no one could truly see me inside. I just felt like I was completely alone. So I was going through that for 5 years, and the next year, 2014, I met one of my best friends. And I'm not going to share her name, but anyway, so we met and we went to summer camps together. We went to church. I always had her over, and our personalities were very much alike. We always laughed at things. When I was little, I was nicknamed Giggles. And so I've always been, on the outside, a very happy person, and she was also. So as I got to know her, we became really close, and I realized that we had a lot in common. Not just our activities or the things that we liked, but the way that our minds functioned. She also struggled with depression, and she felt like she was alone. She went to public school, and she had so many friends, and I was always kind of jealous about that because I didn't really feel like I had friends, or at least that many. But from the outside, if I didn't know her, I would think she had the perfect life. And as I got to know her, I got to know more and more about her struggle. And we became accountability buddies. We would send each other verses. We would uplift each other with words of encouragement. And we both kind of defeated the lies in our minds with truth. And this went on for a couple years. And I knew that she was struggling. And I knew that she had these desires to end it all, but a part of me didn't know that she would actually do it. And so last year, at the beginning of April, or a little bit before that, she went through with it. But before that, a week before, she was at my house, and we were sitting on the floor in my room, and we were just talking. And she was telling me about her struggles and how she felt. And I knew that she was depressed then, and I could hear it in her voice that she wasn't okay. But I didn't know that the next week, that would be the end. So she attempted suicide, and sadly, it kind of...
She passed away.
Yeah.
She passed away.
So she was in the hospital for almost a month, and she was brain damaged. And people kept on saying that there was hope, but once you're brain damaged, there's not much more that you can do. So we got the email from someone at our church that she was in the hospital, and not a lot of people knew that she was struggling with depression or even had ideas of suicide, because everyone else, she had the perfect life. But I know that she didn't, or at least in her mind she didn't. So a couple weeks passed, and I went and saw her at the hospital. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever endured. Just going in and seeing this lifeless body that once held my friend. The last time that I saw her in the hospital, there were pictures above her bed of us at camp and us at church, just laughing and smiling, and just seeing my friend in the bed right below it, lifeless. And I broke down. I was on the hospital floor just sobbing because I didn't know how to deal with this. My mind wasn't even comprehending anything. So I drove home that night by myself, and I don't know how I got home. All I can say is that God helped me and that he pretty much drove the car, because I couldn't even see out my windshield. I was crying so much. So my grieving process kind of went in stages. So I first, after she passed, at her memorial, I was completely crushed. I didn't even know what to feel. All I knew that I was crying and that I was hurt. And then I went through a stage of numbness. I didn't feel anything, but it kind of made me upset and angry because I knew that I cared about her. I knew that I loved her more than anything, but yet my mind was saying that, oh, this wasn't even a person to you. Like, this doesn't matter. And then I went through a period of just heartache and brokenness. And last year, in the summer after she passed, I went to Canada a lot because I kind of wanted to escape from everything, because I was also struggling with suicidal ideations, and depression. I just wanted to get out of my reality. And that's pretty dangerous, just wanting to escape from everything. And so this past year, in April, I was just completely worn out. I was crying all the time, but people thought I was okay. But when in reality, I would sit in my car for 4 hours in random parking lots and just sob. And I felt like I was alone and that no one actually saw me. So it kind of went in the cycle of when I first started feeling depressed, that no one saw me, no one knew how I felt. Everyone just saw me from the outside, like, oh, she laughs, she smiles, she's okay. So I reached out for help and I started seeing a therapist. And it helped for a little bit. It was a virtual therapist, so I only saw them once a week on the computer. And it wasn't really a reality for me. It was almost like this 1 hour out of my week that I was kind of encouraged, and then the rest of the week was just really hard. And so eventually that wasn't really working out for me, and I didn't really know why, but because I was like, oh, I'm seeing a therapist, this should be working for me. But it wasn't, so I stopped going to that one and I started seeing someone in person, and that's been helping a lot. It puts me in perspective of this is my reality and I have control of it, at least somewhat control. So yeah, that's pretty much up to this point of my story.
So while you were talking, you mentioned you felt isolated when you were doing homeschooling, but then your friend who was in public school and had all these friends still felt that isolation and that loneliness. So 2 different spectrums here. Can you explain or have any insight of what it is that's causing the loneliness in people, whether they're in a crowd or whether they are isolated? Why are people still feeling so lonely?
I think that people still feel alone because people don't understand that person. People almost look from the outside and it's very surface level, but when you look on the inside, that person's struggling, that person is hardly breathing inside because they feel like no one really understands them, because all people see is that they're perfect and that they have everything together. And so they can't really talk to people about that because they'll just be like, oh, you're hormonal, or oh, you have friends, you're not lonely. So it is really hard to talk to people when your life from the outside perspective looks like you're okay.
Now, when we were talking before, you had mentioned something very interesting. So for people who have lost others to suicide, they make the comments of that was a very selfish thing to do. Well, to me, you said it's actually a selfless act. Can you explain that?
So the reason why I say it's selfless, because when you are like in deep depression and having suicidal thoughts, you feel like you're a burden to everyone else. You feel like you can't talk to anyone because you're just going to weigh them down with your sadness or your problems. So in a way, them taking away their life would kind of solve problems for everyone else, because they would no longer have to deal with that person, no longer have to listen.
That makes sense. So there's 2 different perspectives here in just 2 different groups of people that I feel very just as strongly of trying to point the 2 different sides of things here. So for those who are losing somebody, when you're contemplating suicide, they're going to perceive it as more of a selfish act because now they're feeling like they were not worth you actually living for. And so now they're being thrown into the questioning of their value and their worth. Versus the one who is caught up in this depression, they're actually thinking that they're doing the other person a favor.
Yeah.
So if both sides could understand what the other side is thinking and feeling, I think that might help things out a little bit.
I think also the people that think it's selfish don't truly understand depression. Depression is not just sadness. Depression is hating everything in your life, feeling like there's no hope for even tomorrow. And when you're sad, it's not that extreme.
Depression, you're in survival mode.
Yeah,
basically.
you're in this dark tunnel and no one else is in there with you. You're just alone.
So no matter how many people might actually be surrounding you, you're still not going to see it.
Yeah.
So what steps then are you taking to be able to get outside of that tunnel and to understand that there are people surrounding you right now, loving you and supporting you and are there for you?
So, I'm not going to lie. Some days I don't feel like that. Some days I still feel like I'm alone and that no one truly sees me. But the thing is, our feelings are not a reality. And if you just go by what you feel, your feelings change every day. And that's not something that you can hold on to. And your reality is that people do care about you. Even if you don't see that, if you went up to someone, and not all people are caring, but the ones that do care, and tell them that, hey, I feel really depressed, or I feel really suicidal, most likely that person would stop what they're doing and listen, or try to comfort, or even just hold your hand, be there with you through this dark journey.
What steps are you taking now? I mean, you're still in the grieving stage. And what steps are you taking? What have you found or put into your life that's helping you cope?
So, definitely like reading my Bible, just knowing that God is there for me, even if I don't feel like humans are. But definitely seeing a therapist, someone that can help you kind of channel how you're feeling or your thoughts, or help you see a different perspective of your story. And I think that's kind of goes into the next question that you had for me, which is, do you feel guilty for what happened? And my answer is no, I don't feel guilty. Because I know that no matter what I said to my friend, most likely she would have still done it. Because when you're in that dark place, everything is blurred. Everything on the outside is dim. And you don't hear anything. All you hear is, you hate yourself, you have no future, you are not loved, you are alone. And that's all you hear. And even if people say, hey, you have friends, or hey, you're not alone, you don't process that.
So for those who are left behind, I feel like they probably struggle with survivor's guilt. Why didn't I catch that? Why, I wish I had known more. I was around them all the time and they never gave me any signs or anything. What would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
My advice is, again, not blame yourself for not seeing those signs. Just like me, not a lot of people even know that I have depression. Because some people are really good at hiding it. And it's not like I fake laughing or fake smiling. There are things that make me happy. But inside, I'm still sad. Inside, I still have these thoughts of suicide. And it's almost like that's your brain's way of working. So to the outside person, maybe they look okay, but that's when you need to sit down with them and truly have a conversation with your child or your friend or coworker. Say, hey, how are you truly feeling? Or how are you actually? Because people say, how are you all the time? And everyone says good. That's not the case.
And even sometimes when somebody does take that step and that time to sit down with that person, maybe they have a really deep connection and deep conversation, it still doesn't prevent anything.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't feel guilty. They did their best. They tried to let them know, but eventually it is on that person to make that decision of whether they're going to believe that somebody is caring and with them and want to be with them every step of the way, or believing, like you said, the feelings that they're feeling.
Yeah.
So feeling versus fact, and it's ultimately their choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that person, not always will we feel like we want to reach out for help, because sometimes it's easier to do things on your own, even though it's painful to feel alone. But that person really needs to reach out for help.
And it's scary reaching out for help, because then you might, things running out through your head. Am I going to lose my friends? Or people are always going to think that I'm, just, I don't know, whatever terms they want to use.
Yeah.
And it can be very terrifying, but I think it's definitely worth the few moments of fear in reaching out and finding out that there were loving arms there to catch you instead of taking the next step.
Yeah. I think there's just a stigma when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
That, your friends aren't going to judge you if you break your leg and go to the doctor.
Right.
That's the same thing with your mind. Your mind's sick. You need help.
Mm-hmm. So what would your advice be to those who are experiencing suicidal ideation? How can you encourage them?
I would say, again, reach out for help, because you can't do this on your own. And I know that a lot of us are very independent and we want to do things on our own. But no man is an island.
Mm-hmm.
We are not meant to live this life alone. We need people. We need each other. And I would say try to look for facts rather than feelings, because feelings come and go. And your mind has a great way of feeding you lies that are far from the truth. And I would say something that has helped me is when I feel depressed, I listen to podcasts. I listen to worship music. I listen to something that helps me just think about something else in that moment. And also make little goals for yourself. My goals for a long time didn't exist. I didn't really have goals. But I started making goals like, I'm going to make myself breakfast this morning. Or I'm going to compliment someone today. And, doing things for other people really helps. And it's very therapeutic. But you definitely need to do things for yourself.
That's right. I like what you said, doing other things for other people. Whenever I get discouraged or really down, just being able to compliment someone else, it may not, the compliment is for them, but I feel like I benefit more and I walk away a lot happier because of that. And just, I think really focusing on that is looking outside, taking a moment to look outside, because the person next to you might actually be going through the exact same thing you're going through now. And so I like how you're saying that no man is an island. Mm-hmm. So try your best to not be that island and to look out and see everyone else who's also trying to be in the
Yeah.
process of being an island, and let's just join together and realize that there is no stigma around this.
Yeah.
We don't have to feel embarrassed. We don't have to feel like we're not worthy or we're weak. That's just not true. I've been working on a podcast about recognizing our weakness, but seeing it more as our strength, because it gives us an opportunity to invite other people into our lives, to strengthen us, to encourage us, and motivate us. So anyways, I just want to say thank you so much, Naomi, for having the courage to speak out and share your story. And for all of you who are listening, I just want to encourage you, have the courage to find that friend and open up to them and talk to them. And if you're that friend that someone's coming to, pay attention, sit down and listen, and reassure them that they're not alone. But for everyone who has been left behind, I also want to encourage you to don't feel guilty. Keep on keeping on, okay? Just thank you again, all right? So join us for some more podcasts coming up. I think you'll find a lot of interesting topics headed your way, so keep a watch for Coffee Break with Trail Youth.
Thank you for listening to Coffee Break. This podcast has been brought to you by Trail Youth. Check us out at www.trailyouth.com.